The Scarlet Letter was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne, one of America's favorite writers, in 1850. Utilizing his Puritan ancestry, Hawthorne created the story of Hester Prynne, a single mother forced by Puritan society to wear a badge of shame, a scarlet A for adultery, on her clothing, to openly confess to the world that she was a sinner. However, Hester was nowhere near ready to give in, and by the time of her death, her rebellion against the puritanical society that would punish her and her sympathy for other outcasts and sinners had recast the A from adultery to Abel, and her ultimate victory was a return to the society that had rejected her and their acceptance of her. It is also worth examining puritanical society and how the meaning of puritanical today has in some ways been watered down and in other ways elevated to an art form. From today's perspective, the Scarlet Letter may not seem that exceptional. Adultery is still religiously condemned but occurs quite often. Upwards of 40% of men and 25% of women will be unfaithful in their relationships. But it is not just the infidelity that condemns Hester, it is her child, Pearl. Hester's transgression and her refusal to name the father of her child are the two things that cause her to be punished, but today that behavior would not be considered deviant. Over 10 million families in the U.S. are single parent, and over 8 million of those are single mothers. While there is still significant stigma surrounding these women, it is not as harsh as that faced by Hester Prynne. Contemporarily, as recently as the 1950s, facilities such as the Magdalen Laundries of Ireland were notorious for their ill treatment of girls and women sent to those institutions. Like Hester, the Magdalens were girls and young women who were considered promiscuous, unwed mothers, and sometimes their daughters. Also, like Hester, the Magdalens were forced into work, doing laundry and needlework to survive. The Magdalen laundries were run by religious institutions just as strict as the puritanical society that condemned Hester and her child. Puritanical obviously stems from the Puritans and suggests a repressive society that favored men, treated women as a separate second class, and that validated religious concerns over any other. However accurate or inaccurate that might be, it is a contemporary definition. The Oxford English Dictionary defines it as simply practicing or affecting strict religious or moral behavior, while others offer synonyms such as rigid or austere. These capture the contemporary idea of puritanical behavior as an adjective, as akin to prudish and unpleasant, especially where sex is concerned. It's only a step further to understand how easily that term could become pejorative. But that discredits the actual Puritans who somehow managed to create and sustain a workable society. It is this contemporary definition, however, that perhaps gives a better understanding of Hester Prynne and the society in which she lived. Even the punishment, the eponymous Scarlet Letter A, served two functions. It was a sign of sin and shame, and a warning not to commit the same transgression against Puritan laws. In fact, the sin or the transgression was a simple one, and one that most of us relate to: love and sex. Hester had, in fact, fallen in love with an unobtainable man, a reverend. For the love of Dimmesdale, Hester sacrifices herself, and in saving him is pilloried herself by public opinion as well as the law. How many times have we seen this play out in contemporary society or media? A notable example is Kristen Stewart and her highly publicized breakup with Robert Pattinson. A woman is discovered in a compromising situation, and regardless of the circumstances, she is vilified and scorned, while both the man who put her in that position, in this case the producer who made her sleep with him, and the man she was unfaithful to, are both given a pass. There are obvious differences here, but ultimately, our society still blames the woman just as Hester was blamed. Perhaps it can all be boiled down to fear: fear of sin, fear of free thinking, even fear of women taking power for themselves. Hence, from the Puritan perspective, freedom of thinking is a more devastating sin than that of adultery. And while Hester's sin of adultery is already severely punished, it is the threat of her free thinking that challenges the established religious and political order. Hawthorne himself both approves of Hester's free thinking, but also rebukes her for it, in the end turning her wild child free thinking radicalism into the tempered steel of a woman's resolution to make things different. In the end, the endurance of Hawthorne's Scarlet Letter isn't just how well it's written or how moving the characters are. It is the depth to which we associate with them and see that in the 170 years since the Scarlet Letter was written, society hasn't really changed all that much.